We are going to continue our series. We're in week 2 of the Stop, Drop, and Roll series. Last week we talked about stopping and just praising God, stopping and being thankful to God, stopping and just showing our gratitude to God for who He is and for who we are because of who He is and just how great it is. It's important for us to stop sometimes and just stop and just recognize God for who He is and thank Him for pouring out blessings on our life and for making us His people. He says, I will be your God, you'll be my people. And that's a blessing in itself. And so we thought it was important to take a moment last Sunday and just stop and thank God for who He is and the things He's done in our life. And it was fitting as we moved into Ash Wednesday this past Wednesday, which is the mark of Lent, the season that we practice as Christians leading up to Easter. It's important to stop and thank Him as we enter this Lenten season, the season of sacrifice, a season of just recognition of God and being more mindful of Him as we enter into that. This week we're going into the drop. We're stop, drop, and roll. And I was thinking about this series because it's not fire prevention. We're not talking fire safety here. It's just a clever name. But I was thinking about when I was a kid. When I was a kid, we heated our house with a wood stove. And so if you guys have ever done that, maybe you currently do that, it gets cold at night. And we were on this 2-story old farmhouse. So my bedroom was like the northeast corner of the house, so it was never warm. And then at 4 a.m., the wood stove would die down, and it would be downright cold in there. Like I'd wake up, see my breath, and you get in your covers, and you try not to move, like one little spot, and you hit the ice, and you just like don't move the whole night. And I never went and put wood in the wood stove. I just froze. Who wants a solution when you have all these problems? But I remember one night in particular, it was cold. It felt like it was cold all night. I couldn't get warm all night. I barely slept. It was freezing cold. And I get to school, and they were doing something different at school. They had all these firefighters come in, and they had kind of like a big dollhouse, like a human-sized dollhouse in the gym. And it opened up. It was kind of neat. There was like a bedroom and a kitchen and a dining room, and you can see in it. You know, it was cut in half, so you could see in it. And the idea was that they were going to have some of the kids come and do it like an obstacle course. Like if there was a fire, what would you do? So they were teaching us to fill the door, to drop, get down on the ground. And they were going to have people run through this obstacle course. And I didn't know at the time, but they were going to select 5 kids, and then they were on a team, and another 5. And it was going to be who can get through the safest and the fastest. It was kind of a fun thing to do to teach about fire safety. And I was the first kid selected. Out of the crowd, they're like, you come on up. You're going to be the first one. So I had crawled into that bed, and it was the first time all day I was warm. And he took so long to explain the process, I fell asleep. And I was a deep sleeper, so I was out cold. They couldn't wake me up. They finally woke me up. It's like, no, just go sit down. You would be dead. You didn't just go. So I never even got to do it, but I remember just thinking how warm I was finally. So it doesn't really have a ton to do with this message, other than I was asleep, and that'll tie in. Because everyone was asking, how could you sleep at a time? How could you sleep in front of everyone? I'm like, I'm tired. My house is freezing. I wish there was a fire there. But it's not fire prevention. Stop, drop, and roll. Today's the drop. We're talking about the drop. And what is the one thing that as Christians, as a church, could we drop and improve our walk with God? What could we drop out of our life and improve our life overall? So today we're talking about dropping fear. What if we could just drop fear out of our life, out of our Christian walk? How great would that be? And so we're talking about dropping fear, because fear is a great enemy of many Christians. We fear all kinds of things and for all different kinds of reasons. And I believe that fear creeps in and keeps us from really experiencing the blessings that God has for us. Fear will stop us from accessing the desires of our heart, the Bible tells us. And it's so difficult to deal with because it creeps in at times that we least expect it, that we least want it. And it'll creep in just one area, one small area of our life, but then it spreads throughout our whole life. And so that was the idea with this week. This is the drop week. We're going to drop some fear. And I was thinking about times in my life when I had seasons of fear, and there have been plenty. For the most part, growing up, I was fearless. And even in my young adult, I was fearless. But then I just got hit hard with the season of fear. And it was a real season. We don't talk about it a lot publicly, but I share in small groups. April had something wrong with her. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But she was told that she would never be able to have kids, actually. We have 5 now, so we've been blessed greatly. But she was told, you might not be able to have kids. So for the first few years of marriage, we didn't have kids. And we just kind of settled on the fact that maybe we wouldn't. Well, she got from a friend of a friend, said, hey, go check out this doctor, this fertility doctor in Saginaw. And we lived in Saginaw at the time. His name was Dr. Fettinger. He was a fertility doctor. He had 12 kids or 10. He had double-digit number of kids as a fertility. I'm like, listen, tell me anything, I'll do it. Like, you know your stuff. And so he put us on a treatment, and very shortly later, she got pregnant with our oldest, Mackenzie, and that pregnancy was great for me anyway. Maybe not for her. It was a pregnancy. How good could it be? Amen. I got an amen of it. It was normal pregnancy, other than it had to be a C-section at the end because some things went wrong. But it was a blessing. And then we didn't follow through with treatments after that, but she kept getting pregnant. And so that was a blessing. But the problem was, after Mackenzie, for the next couple of years, she had 4 miscarriages. And that was a tough season. That was a hard season. And it was hard on her. And I think one of the lies that abortion tells us, the people that support abortion and the whole community tells us, is that it's a woman's choice and men have nothing to do with it. Because it made me feel like I couldn't have feelings about this, but I did. Like, as a man whose wife was going through these miscarriages, I felt loss of a human life. And it was hard for me to deal with. And it was even harder to watch my wife deal with it. And the back was difficult. And it just became the season of like anxiety a little bit. But then she got pregnant with Thomas, our oldest son. And that was hard. Because you're on pins and needles. You're waiting for the ball to drop. You're in this season of fear, and it really crept into my life. And I thought it'd just be this one area. Like, once we get past the 4th month, because as you go, the risk of miscarriages goes down and health goes up as time goes. I'm like, just get past that, And so right when we're turning the corner where we think, oh, we're past that, we're through that, they find this mass on the umbilical cord. And that's all they could say was there's something at the base of the umbilical cord. We don't know what it is, but it's pushing on it. And we're worried that it'll rupture the umbilical cord at any given point. And so now we're like, great, like the baby's made it past the stage that we're really worried about miscarriage. Now we got this issue. And so every couple of weeks we had to go get an ultrasound. And as the baby grew, this mass grew, and they didn't know what it was. And it pushed harder and harder on the umbilical cord. And we didn't know, like, there was a fear. There's a real fear in me, like, am I going to wake up and have my wife dead? Is the baby going to die? Like, is this going to rupture? This is a fear that I had. And it was a pretty tremendous fear. And the lie, I remember one day, I was holding Mackenzie, who was about 2, and reading her books, and April was off with friends or something, and I was reading books, and she fell asleep on my lap, and I was just holding her, and I was like telling God, like, this is miserable. Like, this time, like I'm anxious all the time. Like, I'm in fear all the time. And I was like, if you just get me past this, like, just get us past it, and then things will be good. And that's the lie that fear tells us, is we just have to get past the season, and then things will be good. Now, it worked out that the baby got big enough, Thomas got big enough, that they could do a C-section, and the baby was fine, and April was fine. And it turned out that there was a leak in the umbilical cord that was leaking blood, and it was growing. But no harm was done to my wife. No harm was done to the baby. If you see Thomas now, he's like Gigantor, so obviously nothing really went wrong. But the fear stayed with me. The trial was over. But the thing about fear is that it enters easily into one area of your life, but then it spreads to every area. So I thought the lie was like, she's going to deliver the baby and the fear's gone. But it had already crept in my life. I already in this season of fear. It was already in me, and it started to spread. I started to fear about things I never feared about before. I started to fear about financial things. We weren't well off. I was a social worker, and at that time she did an in-home daycare. But we didn't have a ton of money. But I never cared before. Like, I was never stressed about it. I was never worried about it. But now all of a sudden I had this fear about my financial life. I had fear that things were going to break down. Like the house, we're new homeowners, the first time not renting, we owned a home. Like, what if the furnace went? How would we ever afford that? Like, what if the roof needed to be, all this fear. Like, what if a tree fell on it? Like, that wasn't rational. I never had before, but it started creeping. What if my car broke down? All these things that, like, fear just crept over my whole life because I let it in at one point. And I thought, and I believe that it was just the one area. Like, if we got past that, then I'd be good. I don't know if you guys have been there. I don't know if you guys have been in these seasons of fear where we think, like, if we just get through this, it's going to be fine. If we just get to this one time, then we'll be clear and it'll be gone. But that's the power of fear. We know it doesn't happen that way, and it creeps into our lives. And as Christians, we experience fear. We're told not to throughout the Bible 360 times or more because it's real and we experience it. And we're told not to do it. But the disciples face fear. So I think the disciples, we can look at their life and we can see the fear they expressed and they experienced, and we can learn from it. So I want to look at a time when the disciples were scared. And it's found in Mark 4, 35. And we're going to actually go to chapter 5, verse 1. Now we're missing Tony, but it looks like they got straightened out. Oh man, first service was practice. We had a good practice first service, so you guys are in shape here. We got it all worked out. So Mark 5, chapter 4, verse 35. This is a time when Jesus was deep into ministry, and he had the 12 disciples with him, and they had if you do ministry, if you do this kind of work, it's long days sometimes, and when you get done, you're done. Like you're spent, you're tired, and you just don't want anything to go wrong. You just want to go on you just sleep and then go on with your life, because these were the exhausting days of ministry. And Jesus is at the end of a day, and he's instructing his disciples. Now we have to cross the sea. And this is what happens. That day when the evening came, he said to the disciples, "Let's go to the other side." So they left the crowd behind. They took him along with them, just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with them. And a furious squall, a big storm came up, and the waves break over the boat so it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion, probably because his fire went out. I don't know. And the disciples woke him up and said, "Teacher, don't you care if we drowned?" He got up, he rebuked the wind and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still not have faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." And then in chapter 5, then they went across the lake. They crossed the lake. Jesus asked them, "Why are you so afraid? Like, why? What's going on? Do you still have no faith?" And it's a curious question because we're tempted to say that these disciples had no faith. But Jesus is trying to highlight there's a relationship between faith and fear. There's a relationship between the two. Jesus asked them, "Do you still have no faith?" And these are the disciples of Jesus. It took a tremendous amount of faith to get them to where they were. They had faith. They understood what faith meant. They had to take a tremendous amount of faith to leave their families, to leave their occupations, to follow Jesus. And up to this point, they witnessed Jesus drive out impure spirits. They witnessed Jesus heal paralyzed people. They saw crowds and crowds of people, and they were catered to the crowds and met with the crowds and prayed with the crowds. And they served with Jesus day in and day out. Those were all faith-building experiences for these 12 disciples. They've seen all this happen. They had faith. But he's saying in this one area, this one section of your life, now that you're in the storm, did you forget about all that? Do you not have that faith? Where does it gone? Why are you letting this one area control your whole life? Your fear in this one spot, why are you letting it determine your outcome? Because they had a faith in a lot of areas of their life. They had faith in Jesus, and they had enough faith in Jesus to get in the boat. Jesus said, "All right, it's been a long day, it's been a long week, we've traveled a lot, get in the boat, we're going to the other side." And they had enough faith in Jesus that they did it, that they had enough faith to do it. But this is what fear does. It creeps in, it cracks into our mind, and it kind of just spreads throughout all of it. We forget things that we normally would know. We're not comfortable with things we normally have faith in. That's what fear does. It's kind of like smoke. I'm just old enough to remember restaurants when you walked in, and the first thing they would ask would be, "Smoking or non-smoking?" You guys remember that time? And so if you didn't smoke, you'd sit over here. You guys are the good people. If you did smoke, you sat over here in the restaurant. And that was the first thing they did. The problem is, if you're smoking over there, you're smoking over here. The smoke didn't know that was the boundary you can't cross. And once enough people get smoking over here, the whole restaurant's filled with smoke, right? You leave smelling like smoke. It didn't matter where you sat. You smelled like smoke. It was kind of a joke. I don't know why they even did that. So then they said no smoking whatsoever, because they learned smoke might be contained over here. We think it's contained in this booth, but it's going to filtrate and get every area of the restaurant. If you're smoking in the restaurant, you're smoking. Everyone's smoking with you. And so fear is like that. We think that, okay, this area of my life, I had this one thing in my life that was causing fear, and that's it. I'll contain it to that. It's contained in the storm. When the storm's gone, it'll be gone. That's not the way it works, because it creeps into other areas. And even if people has faith, we struggle with fear. We struggle with it. For me, the season of fear was this baby and my wife. That's legitimate. I was afraid that they were going to die. I was afraid that we were going to have a miscarriage. Again, I was afraid that her cord was going to rupture in the middle of the night. That was a real fear But I didn't anticipate that fear would creep into my finances. Like all of a sudden I'm fearful for my finances. All of a sudden I'm fearful for my job. Like every time there's a restructure, I'm like, I'm going to lose my job. Like I never had that fear before. I was fearful for all these other things that like my car would break down. And I never thought twice about jumping in my car and driving. And we didn't have the greatest cars. But I just had this faith about it. And now all of a sudden every little thing I did was walking in fear. And it even crept into some of our relationships. Like, were those real relationships? Did that really matter? Do these people really care about me? And Jesus is saying that you have no faith because the fear that you're experiencing isn't going to be contained in this storm. It's going to go way beyond the storm. You're going to carry it with you out of the storm. You're going to carry it with you. And it's not just about the water coming in the boat. It's going to creep into every area of your life. And it's going to stay with you until you get rid of it. And he's saying that faith's the key to get rid of fear. These seasons of fear, you have to fight it. You have to fight it with faith. And faith is a big deal to God. And so I was kind of looking into some of the things that the Bible says about faith. Faith is the essence, is what creates the New Testament. In Hebrews 11, it tells us without faith, we can't please God. Like we can't do anything pleasing to God without faith. And Matthew 9 tells us that faith will unlock every good desire and pure desire of our heart. Like the desires of our heart can be unlocked through faith. Faith will displace fear. The more faith that you build in, the more fear that you'll push out. And it's always been about faith. Even Moses, when he was crossing the desert, like he had to agree and he had to obey, but it was all about the faith he had in God. Noah built an ark because he had faith. It wasn't about the Old Testament obedience. It was about this faith that was instilled in him. And I say that because I'm the first to say that living a life of faith doesn't mean we're not going to have seasons of fear. Having fear doesn't disqualify you or negate you from being a believer in God or a powerful person in ministry walking with God. What I don't want you to hear is that just because you're in a season of fear, you're not a Christian, or you can't be used by God, or you just lack faith in the sense of you don't even know who God is. It's not that. It's not what he's saying. The disciples were in a season of fear in this passage, and it wasn't the last time they experienced this type of fear. But in our Christian walk and our Christian faith, sometimes we're going to have these seasons of fear, and our faith will help us get us through those seasons. Faith will help us not be caught in the undertow and dragged down permanently into fear. Hebrews is sometimes referred to as the book of faith. It's a place in the Bible that if you want to learn about faith, go read Hebrews. It talks about what faith is, what faith does, how faith works. And in Hebrews 8, God tells us that there are two covenants that he made with his people. God made an old covenant, an old promise, an old deal with them, and he made a new one. And in chapter 8, starting in verse 8, he quotes the author. We don't know who the author of Hebrews is. Probably Paul, but I wouldn't quote that. Don't go around acting like you're smart and say, Pastor Jeremy said it's Paul, because you probably look dumb. But Paul quotes God from Jeremiah, the book of Jeremiah, and he says this in Hebrews 8 through 12. But God found fault with the people and said, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I'll make a new covenant, a new promise with the people of Israel and the people of Judah, and that includes us because we're grafted into these people. It will not be like the covenant I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand and led them through the desert and led them out of Egypt. We can go on to the next one. Because they did not maintain faithful to my covenant, and I turned away from them, declares the Lord. This will be a new covenant, a new promise I will establish with the people of Israel. After that time, declares the Lord, I'll put my laws in their minds and I'll write them on their hearts. I will be their God and they will be my people. No longer will they teach their neighbor or say to another, know the Lord, because they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest. For I'll forgive their wickedness and I'll remember their sins no more. We're grafted into this type of covenant, this type of relationship with God. The first covenant was the old school, the Old Testament covenant. It was when God had to take his people by the hand and lead them around. He literally was their GPS through the desert. Still took them 40 years, but he was giving them turn-by-turn navigation of where to go. He was leading them, he was showing them what to do, showing them what's right, showing them what's wrong, showing them how to behave, showing them what was safe, what wasn't safe. He was leading them by the hand, Like a child that we have to lead by the hand, if we let go of their hand, they get lost pretty quick. If you're in the mall, and we were in the mall with Thomas, I'll stick on Thomas. When he was about 3, he loved to take off, and I let go of him for a minute. We're in the play place, and he was like way down 4 stores down, like just loving life, free as can be, making a run for it. The minute I let go of his hand, he took off running to unsafe places. He had to be told what was safe. He had to be held by the hand and showed what was safe because he didn't know otherwise. That was the first covenant. God said, this is my people of Israel. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to lead them where they have to go. I'm going to instill this relationship with them where they have to be held by the hand and shown step by step what to do. He said, but that's going to be old. I got a new one coming. And this new one's going to be a covenant that's going to be way different. It's going to be by faith. It's going to be by faith. I'm going to give them my very heart. I'm going to give them my very thoughts so they can know me in ways that they couldn't know me before. And they'll have to trust me in who I am. And their identity will be found in who I am, not who they are. And they'll have my heart and my mind to guide them on their own. No longer will I have to hold them by their hand. They'll know the way to go if they trust me and live their life by the Spirit, by the Word. It's a relationship instead of God pulling us out of trouble like he would have before. Instead of him coming and reaching and pull us by the hand, he's going to use those times of trouble to teach us about our faith. He's going to teach us about how we can trust him in those times. And he's going to teach us about who he is and his character in the times of trouble. God's saying to him, us just displaying trust in him is better than him leading us behind and making us obey. It's the same with our kids, right? When they're little, like we tell them when to go to sleep, when to eat, don't touch that stove, don't cross the street. We lead them by the hand and tell them all these things, and that's good. We have to, right? We control them. That's a stressful time. You have to tell them over and over and over what to do, and they're always going to do the wrong thing, and you tell them the right thing to do. But when they get older, you don't have to do that as much. And they get older, and then what's the best times when you have an older child? I have a 20-year-old daughter who thinks she's mature and thinks she's ready to be married in a few months, and she's wrong. That got another one. This is my favorite person. Donna, I would send my daughter over to you. She called me yesterday and she said, my car's doing this thing. What should I do? And I'm like, well, take it here, get it checked out. Like, that was the best thing for me because she had a problem in her life. She had a situation in life. And what did she do? I'm going to call my dad and I'm going to trust in his advice. I'm going to seek him out. I'm going to ask him for what to do. Like, as a father, that's the best thing in the world. Like, thank you. I'm so glad she called me. Now, with a younger daughter, we have to still lead her by the hand in some ways. That's not as fun. But when they realize and they trust you and they reach out to you, God's saying, that's what I want your relationship with me to be. That's what this new covenant's all about. There's a time when God led his people by the hand and he taught them the law, what was wrong and what was right. And now he wants us to know him. He wants us to share his heart. He wants us to share his thoughts. He wants us to know him so much. He wants us to have a relationship with him that we call on him and we talk to him and we show him that we know him by the faith that we display in him. There's a relationship between this faith and fear. Faith is just displaying our trust in the relationship of God. Like, we trust God. We're saying, God, I trust you, and I'm going to show that trust that acted out. That's what faith is. And fear comes and creeps into our heart and tries to break down that relationship and lie to us about who God is and why we can't trust him. Because the more that we trust God, the more we get to know God, the more we know who we are as children of God. Like, the more we know God's identity, the more we learn about our identity. And fear tries to break that relationship. And the conflict is that fear comes in at most when we're living out obedience to God. Fear will creep in at most when we're obeying God. When we're doing what God wants us to do, that's when we experience the storms. That's when we experience the hard times. That's when we experience the scary things in life, is when we're actually doing what God wants us to do. And then we think, God, like, I'm doing what you want me to do. Like, why is this happening? And we start to misunderstand our relationship with God again. We go back to when we were a child. We're like, God, are you here? Like, don't you even care? Like, do you see me? Like, I'm trying to do what you want me to do. We do that. We do that today. Like, has God ever asked you to move to that city? Has God ever asked you to take that job? Has God ever asked you to marry that person? And then storms come? Like, you go marry that person. Oh, great. And your life, 20 years later, there's no storms in your marriage? That doesn't happen. Does he ask you to move to that city? And then guess what? All this stuff happens. Or he asks you to take that job. He asks you to buy that house. He asks you to join that ministry. And then you just get attacked. And these storms happen when you take the step of obedience. That's the start of faith. When we obey, we start the faith process. And then we start walking this faith and we have this journey, and that's when the storms come and it tries to disrupt our faith. And this fear moves, and boom, next thing we know, we're in a storm. Like, how do we get here? Like, God is doing what you told me to do. The disciples were on one side of the lake and they had to get to the other side of the lake. They're on side A, and God said, go to side B. And they got in the boat, they obeyed. They're walking with the Spirit, they're walking with God, and then boom, all of a sudden they're in a storm. Now I'm going to quote my brother, and this is dangerous. When talking about this passage, he always says, God will call you from point A to point B, but in the middle is the sea. He's lame, right? Don't nod your head. I don't agree with him. But God will tell us to do something, and we'll start to do. But then we have the journey. Like, we have to get to point B. Like, God doesn't say, go to the sea. He says, go across the sea. But we know to get there, there's this middle part. He said that you'll get to point A to get to point B, but you got the sea in the middle, and storms always happen in the sea. And we're doing exactly what we want, but we find ourselves in a storm. And in those storms, we question God. We start to question who he is. We start to lose our faith a little bit. We start to question our relationship. Maybe I'm not maybe if I was close with God, this wouldn't be happening. Like, maybe if I really heard God right, I want to be in this situation. And we start to question things, and we don't know where to look. And that's what the disciples did. They said, Jesus, why are you sleeping? What's going on? Don't you even care about us? Don't you care we're going to die? Like, they started questioning Jesus. Like, don't you even care about us? Of course Jesus cared about them. Of course he loved them. He spent all this time with them. He pulled them out of their own lives and showed them who he was. Special revelation just to them about the inside workings of Jesus. Of course he loved them. But now they're in a storm and they forgot all that. They're like, don't you even care what's happening? Don't you even see what's going on? Don't you even care if I die? They lost sight of who Jesus was, and more importantly, they lost sight of who they were in Jesus' eyes. Don't you care about me? And they began to fear. It takes faith to obey. It takes faith to get in the boat. But that faith will be tested greatly once you're in there. Because more often than not, in order to get to point A and go to point B, you have to cross the journey. You have to cross the sea. You have to go through some trials. And the storms always happen in those times. It's something important to remember about this, though, is that God didn't cause the storm. Like God didn't test their faith so that he understood what they knew. God knows every ounce of faith that we have. God knows exactly where we stand. And the storm tested their faith for them to realize where they were. But God doesn't want calamity in your life. God doesn't want you to go in the storm. Jesus didn't say, all right, guys, get in a boat, head to that storm. He said, get to the other side. He didn't send the storm. He didn't want them to be in the storm. If you read the book of Job, you realize we have an enemy. Like, we have an enemy that works against us, and we see that the enemy can be powerful. God allowed the enemy to attack Job's health. He gave boils all over his skin. Like, God allowed the enemy to attack his wealth. He killed off his crops and his cattle and his flocks, and even his children died. And God also allowed the enemy to send a storm, send high winds, send all this stuff. Like, Satan can control the weather. That's a scary thing to think about. But not only do we have that, we also have our inner flesh. You guys have flesh that rises up in times and tries to take you down to try to stop you from what you're doing. We have self-doubt. We have questions like, you can't do that. We have this sin in us that's trying to pull us down. And have you ever met anyone that's not been for you? Anyone that's evil? Anyone that resists you? We have people all around us. We have so many things trying to stop us from doing what God does. We know God doesn't need to stop us. He's not going to send the storm. The storm's going to come from that world. The storm's going to come from our enemy. The storm's going to come from ourself. God doesn't need to send calamity. He doesn't want that. He wants victory. He wants us to get to the other side. Jesus said, we've got to get to the other side, not let's go get stuck in a storm. The storm came from outside. That's such an important part, because so many of us think, well, I'm bad on this cancer journey. God must want me here for a reason. No, he doesn't. He wants you to be healthy. I hit this financial roadblock. God must be trying to teach. No, he wants you to be wealthy. There's these storms, though, but he's also telling you that in the storm, you can still have faith and you can still trust him. There's plenty of things that are going to try and stop us, but God's not one of them. God's for us. And those are the things that I hope to encourage you by this morning as we close with some things that is encouraging about this story. We talked about the negative. We talked about the fears. We talked about the storms. But there's some indications in here that there's hope for us because, first of all, the first thing they did was cry out to Jesus. And that's what I would do. I'd be like, Jesus, I know you. Like, get up. And like, look at what's going on. But they cried out to Jesus, and they're able to because he was in their boat with them. Like, that's the first thing. Like, God doesn't leave us. God doesn't want us to be in the storm. He wants us to be at the other side. And there's an other side of the storm. I promise you, if you're in a storm right now, there's another side. God says, I want you to get to the other side. You're in it now, but know what? You're not alone. I'm there with you. You can cry out to me. You can call out to me. You can wake me up. I'm not sleeping. Trust me. You can come and I will be there for you because I'm in the storm with you. Jesus went with them. Jesus was for him. Jesus was not against him. He didn't say, just ride out the storm. Let's see how long it takes. You're learning a lot about yourself. God's learning about you. No, he calmed the storm. He said, you can cry out to me. I'm here. Like, I'm here with you. That's one of the promises we have from the Bible is that God's with us. God's for us. God doesn't want us in the storm. God just wants us on the other side of the storm. He says, I want you on the other side. By the way, when they got there, they faced the guy with demons. He had so many demons in him, they couldn't even chain him up. They couldn't even control the guy. And it took Jesus himself saying, get out of this impure spirit. The storm was meant to stop that from happening. This powerful spirit had control of the whole city on the other side. They were run by this spirit. No one could chain this man up. And Jesus came to set that city free. You think the enemy wanted that? He said, I'm going to stop them. And then what if I just attack the disciples and crush their faith? We could put an end to this whole thing. There was a reason why the storm came. And God said, we're going to get you to, there's something, someone needs to be set free. You need to be set free on the other side of that storm. We're going to get you through. You have to get to the other side. There's stuff to do. God doesn't just send us on journeys so we run into storms. He sent us on journeys because on the other side, there's breakthroughs. There's some good stuff. There's some work to be done. There's some people to be reached. Like, God wants us there on the other side, not in the storm. So the promise is that he's there with us. He doesn't abandon us. He doesn't forsake us. He doesn't leave us. He says, get to the other side. Don't worry about the storm. I'll take care of the storm. I'll be there with you in the storm. And they're real things. I was in a serious storm in my life. He says, but I'm there with you. Another thing that he's trying to encourage us with is, the reason I left chapter 5, verse 1, was they got to the other side. They reached it. They all did together. One thing that they forgot was they were there for each other. They were together. God gives us the community of believers for a reason. We're in church this morning for a reason. We need each other. God says one of the greatest gifts I'll give you is my church. You guys, that we can encourage each other, that we can strengthen each other, that we can rub off on each other. You know, just like fear is like smoke, like there's secondhand fear, there's secondhand smoke, there's secondhand faith. Someone who has encouraging faith can come up to me when I'm down and out and encourage me, and I can gain their faith just from them. I can kind of steal it from them. I could borrow their faith in the times that I need it the most. God says one of the greatest gifts I'll give you is each other, this community. One of the greatest things that we have is this community to help us with our fears. But just like we have to trust God with our fears and our anxiety and our stress, we have to trust each other with it. We have to build relationships within the church. We have to come to church. We have to join a small group in some forms. We don't have small groups per se, but we got ministry teams. We got a men's Bible study that meets every other Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. And then we have a separate one that meets, we just got started. If you want to join one, Tuesday at 6 p.m. We have a women's Bible study that meets Wednesdays at a certain time, like 10 a.m. maybe. And then at night at Wednesdays at 6:30, there's another women's group. We have a prayer group on 6:30s. We have Sunday school. We have so many things outside of Sunday morning. And they're designed that we come together in life and we share each other's burdens and we share each other's faith because we can't do it alone. When you're in a storm, it's scary. God says, don't fear because you're going to be in storms and it's scary. But the promise is, and we read it this morning in Isaiah 41:10, do not fear, he says, because I'm with you. Do not be dismayed because I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. God doesn't leave us in the storms, and that's encouraging. Jesus was in the boat with them. They could call out to Jesus. They could cry out to Jesus. And he's like, what do you need? Like, I'm here. Why are you worried? We can call out to Jesus in the same way. in the middle of our storms. We don't have to wait till we get to the other side. He will get us to the other side. He'll show us who he has for us. And we have each other. They were in the boat together. They got to the other side together. There's things that we have to do as a church that I can't do by myself, that the missions team can't do by themselves, that the youth group can't do by themselves. We got to be a church that comes together and is in this together, and we borrow each other's faith when we need it, when we're hurting, when we're down and out. We share our burdens, and we cry out to each other, and we encourage each other. God says that the greatest thing about this relationship is you have me. I will be your God. You'll be my people. That's the greatest promise in the history of the world. God will be our God, and we will be his people. And then the second part of that is we're his people. We're together. Like God gave us his spirit to bind us together. God gave us his heart to beat in our chest together as one church. He says, don't be afraid. Don't fear, because you have these things. You're in a storm. To combat your fear with your faith, if you don't have enough, borrow someone else and get some more in there. Get some more help. Get some reinforcements. Send for a lifeboat. But I'm there with you. And as a church, you guys can be there for each other, he says. He says, so fear not. Every fear not comes with, I'm with you. I haven't abandoned you. I haven't forsaken you. I'll be your strength. I'll be your guide. I'll be your witness. I'll be your advocator. I'll be your person that's cheering you on and rooting you on. And then every time they talk about the church, they talk about a body of believers coming together and supporting each other. And that's what we're called to be. He says, so fear not. I'm in the boat with you, and you guys have each other there. You have 12 people. Let's figure this thing out. Let Jesus calm the storm, and let's get to the other side and continue the work that we have to do. He's saying, don't let fear creep into your life in this area, because it's going to take over. Don't let a season of fear become a life of fear. Start fighting your fear with the faith that you have in you, from the Spirit of God in your heart, from the Spirit of God in your mind, from the Spirit of God that's with you all the time, and join a community of people to fight this fear together. And that's what he's trying to tell us over and over again in his Bible. In this story, I think we can be encouraged by that. I pray you are encouraged by that if you're in a storm this morning. So let's pray. Father God, we thank you. We thank you for your message. We thank you for your word. God, we thank you for your son. Last week, we just took a week and we were just thankful for you. And we show this gratitude because it's so important for us to recognize who you are, how great you are, how you desire to be in a relationship with us. Because there's going to be times that we have to rely on that. There's going to be times that we don't have the strength in our own bodies because we're crippled by fear. We have some real trials that we're going through. We have some real issues that we're going through. And God, we're tempted to start to pick apart who you are, or we're starting to pick apart of how good our relationship is, or we're tempted to pick apart of who we are because we're in these storms. And you tell us, don't. Trust you. Trust that you're good all the time. Trust that you're faithful all the time. Trust that you're just all the time. Trust that you know how much vengeance to pour out, and you know how much grace to pour out. God, we can trust you in those storms. You know exactly how much water is allowed in the boat before we sink. You know exactly how bad the waves can get before you have to step in and calm it for us. God, we can trust who you are. And God, help us never question our relationship with you. Help us understand that we can turn to you at any given point, and you're like our dad. Like pick up the phone and call and, hey, I got a problem. And you're overjoyed that we're calling you. You're overjoyed that we let you into our life. God, help us always remember that you're there for us. You don't desire us to be stuck in a storm. You never say, hey, go check out that storm. Go hang out there for a while. You say, just get to the other side. But on the way there, if there's a storm, I'll be there with you. And God, I thank you for this church. I thank you for a body of believers who care about each other, who love each other, who pray for each other, who desire to be in relationship with each other, who are seeking the lost, who understand that people in the community might not know you, might not know this hope. We all know fear. Fear is a human condition. We all know it. Only some of us know the hope that comes along with it. God, I thank you this church desires people to know the same hope that they have. It's not just for them. They understand it's for the world, and they want to show it to the world. God, help us be a people who don't live in fear and cower in fear, but turn on faith when fear comes, and we'll share our faith with others, and we can borrow faith from others, and we can conquer the world with the faith that we have because of who you are. We turn our trust to you, and we display it by our faith. We thank you for the opportunity to do that. We thank you and we love you. Amen.